Hey, we'll start here in a minute. Start here in about just a few seconds here. Start right at 10 o'clock. And good morning. And I hope you're ready to. We're going to have a lot of fun. So I hope you're ready to check this out. Okay. Well, welcome and welcome to our my webinar on entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial mindset. And so today, what I'm going to go over is, I mean, what is the different, what is an entrepreneurial mindset, and what kind of attitudes and beliefs do you have to be a successful entrepreneur? And I'm just going to go through sort of the ideas from my life's journey and talk about it from other people's perspectives too, what they've thought. But so let's just get going. And I have a whole bunch of books. You can find them on Amazon, and my courses on entrepreneurship on Udemy, and my course on my website, mba-asap.com. And the books are all available through Amazon. And there's just I have quite a few writings on startups and entrepreneurship. Been thinking about this for a long time, been doing it for a long time, and then thinking about it for a long time. So, let's start out by what do people think about, entrepreneurship as a discipline, and is it a discipline? Is it learnable or teachable? And spoiler alert, it is learnable and teachable, but it takes a certain amount of personality too. And what's the goal of entrepreneurship? What are we trying to, when we become an entrepreneur, what are we trying to achieve really for ourselves and for the people around us, the broader stakeholder universe that we interact with, and defining what is success. What is success for us? Um, so these are some of the things we're going to talk about. So I always like this quote by Potter Stewart. Potter Stewart was a Supreme Court justice in the United States, and when they had a big case on pornography, Potter Stewart had said he couldn't define pornography, but he knows it when he sees it. And I always thought that's a great thing. Entrepreneurship too. These concepts that are broad, relatively vague. What do they actually mean? Can you actually pinpoint it? And I like to say, I don't really know, but I know it when I see it, right? And so I always like that quote, and I like that. Um, I like, as a Supreme Court justice, where you're supposed to be very precise and specific, to say that it's pretty cool. So this is a good idea of entrepreneurship too by Howard Stevenson, who is a famous entrepreneurial, startup professor at Harvard University in the United States. So entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources controlled. And that's really the thing. A lot of us wait and say, oh, I have to have the money, I have to have the knowledge, I have to have all this stuff before I start, right? And really, entrepreneurship is you see an opportunity, you have to be opportunistic, right? You see an opportunity and you try to seize that opportunity. And as you go along, as things unfold, the resources that you need reveal themselves, so that you can keep on going, whether the resources are, intellectual, skill sets, money, whatever kind of things, they will show up as you start the process. And starting is the key thing. And this is by, Thomas Edison. This is an interesting one too. Vision without execution is just hallucination, right? If you have a vision, if you have an idea, but you're not executing on that idea, you're not bringing that idea into the world, what is it other than just a daydream, right? So they say, ideas are a dime a dozen, but it really comes down to execution. A lot of entrepreneurs are starting out. People are afraid to share their idea. They think, oh my gosh, somebody's going to come and steal my idea because it's so precious and great. But really, ideas are the simple part. You shouldn't be, afraid of people trying to steal them, because the execution, the doing of it is really the hard part. That's where it comes in. Um, so here's, another idea. Vision without action is a daydream, like we just said, and action without vision is a nightmare, right? You have to have the vision to direct where your actions are going. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, type of idea, right? You have to have both. You have to have vision, and you have to have a bias towards action. So here's some things to think about with entrepreneurship too. We're all entrepreneurs. We all understand business in an intuitive way because we're running an enterprise, right? And to understand our entrepreneurial style or something, we want to be an authentic. We want to be genuine. We want to basically be ourselves and amplify that, instead of trying to, think, well, what is an entrepreneur like? What do I have to? I have to be like Steve Jobs, or I have to be like this guy or that girl. No, we just, we want to be more ourselves. That's the whole idea. I think for me, behind becoming an entrepreneur is like, I wanted to get out from under working for other people, where I had to wear sort of a mask and try to fit in and those kind of things. And that just got uncomfortable after a while. I wanted to just try to be me and do things that I wanted to do and be self-directed, and then let myself discover who I am. That was really the key for me to want to become an entrepreneur. So you can read these. I'm going to put this in the show notes and things, the whole slide deck, so you can go through and read these. But basically, you already run a complex, business, and you get your revenues, you have your expenses, you decide what to do, and then at the end of the month, there's some money left over. All those kind of things, right? You're already an entrepreneur. All the different functions, right? How you market yourself, your branding, developing skills and goals, doing courses. Listen to this, that's part of your strategy, right? You have an idea. Even if you're just listening to this, well, you're definitely on your way to being an entrepreneur, because you're thinking, I want to know what this is. I want to understand. I want to hear someone else talk about it, you know. And I always love this from Jay-Z, right? Um, he's not a businessman. He's a business man. He's like, he's running his enterprise is based on him. It's his identity. It's his brand. He is the business. And that's the way for us all to think about. We are a business. We're a walking, talking business. And you really want to be genuine and authentic. I like, be yourself, only more so, right? That's where you really want to try to expand what you already are, instead of trying to be performative, to perform like you're someone else. That's not so much fun. So here again, be yourself, only more so. And here's a bunch of reasons why. Uh, so now I'm going to go through a few quotes here, by people that I really respect. Part of being an entrepreneur, part of being, any type of business person, a leader, is to be a generalist, to read and read widely. And so a lot of these quotes are for people that I've read and gotten familiar with over time, and they have been my mentors, basically. And what I do whenever I see a quote that I like anywhere, I copy it and paste it into my notes on my iPhone. And I think that's a great way to keep whatever you have, a little notes thing on your phone. Just cut and paste in little things that you can go back and remind you of what you want to be, what you want to trying to do. It's so critical for inspiration, for direction. So these are all about, and basically when you see a lot of people saying similar things, it's like, yeah, it's something to pay attention to, right? Joseph Campbell, he wrote Hero with a Thousand Faces, the mono myth, that shows up across all cultures. Just a brilliant book, a brilliant man. And the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. And that's what entrepreneurship allows you to do, to try to be who you are. And that's a very difficult. We think that's simple. That's a tough thing to be. Here's another wonderful, thinker and inspiration, Ralph Waldo Emerson. From the mid 1800s in America. Um, he was actually a preacher too. He was a pastor at a church in Boston. A brilliant guy. Reading his essays are just something everyone should do. His essay on oh, I can't think of it. Self-reliance is just a great one, but they're all fantastic. Use the transcendentalist movement. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And how true that is. Everybody is trying to make us conform in some way. And if we want to stand out, if we want to fly our freak flag high, and do what we want to do, that takes a lot of courage. But it also is an amount of freedom that is just a wonderful thing. So it's the greatest accomplishment, to really follow your truth, follow who you are, be who you are. And E. E. Cummings, a wonderful poet, to be nobody but yourself in a world that is doing its best night and day to try to make everybody else, try to make you everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting. These people know how tough it is, how difficult it is in the world to be really who you are, and to stand up for that. Wonderful. Here's another great quote. Happiness comes from getting what you want. Joy comes from being who you really are. So these kind of quotes, what I'm trying to do is get that idea across to you that we're trying to be, and then we have to start interrogating ourselves. Well, who am I? Who do I really want to be? What are my, important things that I stand for and that are, non-negotiable, and that I want to have a enriched life following those pursuits that I know are really important to me. And, just don't limit yourself, right? Don't limit yourself to conventional wisdom and others' expectations. And here's a bee, and basically, if you look at aerodynamics, bees shouldn't be able to fly, but yet they do. So who are you? Who you want? Who do you want to be? That's the key question here, right? And how this fits into entrepreneurship. But this is the bigger picture, right? This is really this is where we start. This is the mindset. And what is success? We asked at the beginning, what is success? Well, here's one version of it is, success is your days looking the way you want them to. When you can do what you want, when you want, with who you want, that's freedom. That's really living. I would say that's success. For me, that has been success. When you have to show up in an office and your boss is going to dictate. If you ever saw, Office Space, that movie and stuff, with the boss, so things like that, where it's just it's so soul crushing. Now, working a job can be great too if you have the right team and the right boss and mentors and all that kind of. But many people just have, find themselves in terrible situations where they feel constrained, constricted, boxed in by their job, and they have to show up, and people don't appreciate what they do. That's what we're trying to get away from here. That's really what we're trying to escape, right? We're trying to get escape velocity outside of the gravitational pull of having to work for others to make a buck so we can pay our rent and have, pay for some food and stuff. So Austin Kleon, love him. He's written a bunch of great books. What do you want your days to look like? It's just great. What career should you choose? Should you go back to school? All the kind of things you could do. You really have to pass the time. So why don't you do it in a wonderful and creative way? Bottom line, right? And this is another idea too. Life is a series of collisions with the future. It is not the sum of what we have been, but what we yearn to be. And that's really that growth mindset, yearning to what we want to be expansive, to grow, to become more, be in that act of becoming. That's where the excitement lies. And when you're an entrepreneur, when you're starting a company, that's what you're all about. How can I make this company grow? How can I make it more fruitful? How can I make it work better? How can I, what skills do I need to do that? What do I need to learn? And then going out and finding out. Nowadays, all the information is there, right? You can get everything online. You can buy a book for a few dollars or a course for not that much, and really the skill sets that you need to stack, all the information is there. The only thing that's holding us back is our ability to sit down and focus and do that deep work and learn those skills. So here's just a quick assignment. Try this out. Pick 3 words that describe your deepest convictions, and really, this is the core. This is the place where you want to operate from. That's going to be your north star. These are going to be your guiding principles. And when you have those, then everything else fits into slides into place, right? Because they have to be measured against these criteria, and you just do it. And I love this quote by Mary Oliver, right? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with this one wild and precious life? And it's so key. This is not a run through, this is not a read through, it's not a rehearsal. This is our life. This is when we get to choose who we're going to be, and then we're going to be it, you know? And that's all you have to do really, is just make that mind switch, right? It's like, this is what I am. This is what I want to be. A great quote by Lao Tzu, basically, that, we're always waiting for somebody to come and save us or give us the answer or something like that. And, well, guess what? Things have already happened and no one's coming to save you. You have to take full responsibility. And that's the thing about entrepreneurship, is you have to be willing to shoulder the responsibility of living. You can't blame it on somebody else. You're not waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. You have to be a prime mover. And that's really the exciting part, but it's also, it takes courage, you really have to do it. So here's ways to think about, who you are, and this is one, at the end of your life, project yourself into the future, and think what, at the end of your life, you're 80 years old now. And, what would your 80-year-old self tell you to do? Would it tell you to play safe, or would it tell you that, you should have took that risk there? You should have done that thing. I wish I would have, figured out what I should have done, and done it. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to get to that later stage of life and say, you know what, I did it my way, kind of that Frank Sinatra song. I tried. Maybe it wasn't so straight and narrow, and it might have been messy, but at least I did what I wanted to do. And that's so key, right? And also, and this is a great exercise to do, and I've done it, and it really, believe me, it works, is to picture yourself in 10 years. Say, okay, it's 10 years from now. If I do everything that I really want to do, how will I be living? Where would I be? How would I be living? How would I be spending my days? And if you dream that out and really put it very concretely down to very small details, really make that vision clear, and then write it down, and put it in a drawer and look at it like every year, you'll really start you realize that now you've set in your subconscious, and you'll start your conscious mind and all will start going in that direction. And always think, what would you do? What would you attempt if you knew you couldn't fail? If you knew that whatever you did, it was going to happen. We do a lot of things that now we're it might not work out, or, oh, I may not approach that person, that I'm really attracted to, because they may say, reject me or something, or whatever those kind of things are. If we knew we couldn't fail, we'd do a lot of bolder actions in our life, right? So think about that. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And those are the kind of things then to do. The other thing to think about is, when you're procrastinating, when you're doing, you're supposed to do this task, but, oh gosh, these things seem more interesting, and you just keep doing those. Those are probably the tasks that you do when you're procrastinating. Pay attention to those. Those are the things you probably should be doing in your life, because you enjoy them. You do them no matter what. And that's when you're an entrepreneur, what you really have to be able to do is to, when things aren't going right, or if you fail, or whatever you want to call it, you have to just keep doing those things anyway, because you can't stop. You just like doing them. And then, they always say, oh, you have to keep going, and no matter what. But if it's something that you really love, and you're just doing it because you like to do it, then perseverance is effortless, because you're going to do it anyway. Those are the kind of things to look for. Like Naval Ravikant says, that look for things that feel like play to you and look like work to others. That's the kind of thing to do. So creative visualization. This is basically the thing I was just talking about. Dream big and write down your remarkable life 10 years from now, and just put it down. Everything. Don't hold back, and you'll be amazed that in that 10 years time, all of those things, or a lot of them, will really come to pass. They'll really become true. I know this from my own experience. Um, we we tend to overestimate what we can do in a year, and we way underestimate what we can achieve in a decade. So think long term. You're going to play long term games. So here's, the quote is from Susan O'Malley. What advice would the happiest version of your 80-year-old self give you? Think about that, and then take that advice. And I love this one by G.K. Chesterton, right? There are no rules of architecture for castles in the clouds. When you're dreaming big, don't hold back because you think, oh, that's not practical. This is not practical. There are no rules of architecture for castles in the clouds. And that's what we're building. We're building the dream first, and then we're figuring out how to bring that dream into reality. That's entrepreneurship. Nietzsche, right? How can we go anywhere without him, right? Look at that mustache. One of the finest mustaches in all of Europe. So he who has a why, if you know why you're doing stuff, you can bear almost anyhow. You can bear anyhow. You know, you'll figure out the how if you have a why. And if Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why. That's basically, and you could look online for Simon Sinek and find some little videos of him talking about this too. He's really, really a fantastic and inspiring thinker. But if you know your why, then the how reveals itself and the what will reveal itself. So that's what we're working on here, right? Is the why. Why do we want to do it? And I love this quote, right? And George Eliot, that was her pen name. She took a pen name of a man because she was a wonderful writer, but women didn't have the rights and all they did back in the 1800s when she was writing and stuff. So what'd she do? Well, she took on the pseudonym of a man. Brilliant. She did what she had to do, right? But here, it's never too late to be what you might have been. And I think that's so key too, is like we tend to think, oh, I'm too old to go back to school, or oh, I can't do this now because my time has passed, or whatever it is. It's never too late. It is never too late. You think, oh, if I would have known, I thought of this a while back and changed my mindset. That whole thing, like, if I would have known now what, if I would have known then what I know now, if I knew younger what I know now, oh, I would have done things differently. I was like, wait a minute. Let's think right now. Who knows how much time we have left? Start engaging in all those things now, and engage with them very, very aggressively. Really do them. Have conviction. Have conviction in your ideas. And not say, oh, it's too late for me to learn how to play the piano, or it's too late for me to learn interpretive dance, or whatever you want to do. Now is the time. There's a great Chinese quote, that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is right now. And here we go. This is, Meister Eckhart. I mean, he was a brilliant thinker from the 1400s. But do exactly what you would do if you felt most secure. If you felt like you couldn't fail, if nothing could go wrong, do exactly what you would do if you felt that way. That's the pivot point. That's the point to move from. Don't second guess. Don't say, that may not happen, or what if this or that. Don't set yourself up for not doing things. Do them, and then course correct as you go along. See what the feedback is and course correct. And here's a great guy for you, Churchill. I mean, he was like, everybody thought he was finished. They thought brilliant but erratic. His career was over in the 1930s. But those years when he was in the background, he knew who he was, and he kept studying and practicing and learning. And then he came back when the time was right, World War II, and shepherded and navigated through World War II, Britain. Amazing. And these things too, success is not final, and success is something too. That's not something, it's a continual thing. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. I mean, we keep going, right? You get knocked down 10 times, you get up 11 times. That's key. And I always love this one. It just cracks me up. Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And that's really key. That's how to measure success in a way. It's like, do I go from one thing and I never lose my enthusiasm? Look at him smiling. I mean, unbelievable. And Rilke, a wonderful poet, German poet from around the turn of the 1900 century. This is how we grow, by being defeated by greater and greater things. Now, isn't that beautiful? I mean, that's like, you know, it- what I'm moving into here now is our attitude towards failure. Everybody's like, "Oh, what if I fail or fail? Everybody's going to think I'm bad, or you know, I won't recover from failure." And that's not true at all. Failure, embrace failure. Fail forward, fail fast. Failure is just another word for learning, right? That's really what it is. We learn from things that don't work out. Thomas Edison said, "I didn't fail. I learned 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb." And then bingo, 10,001, he made a light bulb. I mean, that's brilliant. And that takes perseverance. Yeah. Our business in this world is not to succeed, but to continue to fail in good spirits. Just another way of saying the Churchill quote, right? Beautiful things. Here's Charlie Chaplin, right? What a wonderful entertainer he was. Failure is not important. It takes courage to make you full of yourself. It does take courage. And then here's Mark Twain, one of my favorite writers. If you haven't read most of Mark Twain's work, get busy. He's just wonderful. But he's had a lot of worries in his life, most of which never happened. How many times have we worried about something, worried and worried, and then it didn't happen, right? Think about those things. The next time you're worrying, start to think about that. Is this really something that's going to happen, or is it just something I worry about because evolutionarily wise, we're sort of made to worry because worries used to keep us safe. But nowadays, we're pretty safe and secure, and our worries tend to be unimportant things that just cloud our brain, cloud our mind. And here, Truman, right? Action is better than, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. You have to have a bias toward action. I like, instead of ready, aim, fire, ready, fire, aim, do the action, the fire part, and then course correct, and that's the aim part. Take the feedback from your action, see how it gets what responses you get, and then take that and then course correct, refine what you're doing, and iterate. Take some action, see what happens, course correct, refine what you're doing, do it again, and keep moving forward in that type of iterative cycle. Here again, we tend to uh, wish we had done the things that we didn't do more than the things that we did do that didn't work out, right? I mean, it's really the way we are, and that's the way we should be. But the price of inaction is far greater than the cost of making a mistake. Meister Eckhart again, just brilliant. You know, we always think about the cost of making a mistake as being so huge, but the price of inaction, we never even get to know what that is because we didn't even try. The key is to try, always try. And here's Patton, right? A good plan violently executed right now is far better than a perfect plan executed next week. And that's key. We always have to work with imperfect information, incomplete information, and we have to move now and we have to see what happens. And we have to do, not just wait till everything's perfect, because that never happens. Perfectionism, being a perfectionist, is a form of procrastination. We don't want to do that. We want to be action oriented, a bias towards action. Here's one of my favorites too, Voltaire, beautiful writer from the 1700s, the Enlightenment. Le mieux est l'ennemi du bien. Excuse my French, not so good of accent. The perfect is the enemy of the good. Good enough is what we want to get, not perfect. We don't want to wait for perfect. Like Voltaire, accurately saw, that's a procrastinating thing. So here's the other thing now we have to think, one of the big fears is the fear of change, right? We like things to be stable. We like things to be predictable. We like routine. We like that comfort. And getting out of that comfort zone is scary. So again, courage comes into play, right? But it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one most adaptable to change. That is really key. We have to be adaptable to change. And guess what? We're living in a rapidly changing world. We have artificial intelligence, robotics, genomics, biotech, all kinds of things are rapidly changing the possibilities for us. They also represent dangers and things. We don't know exactly how things are going to go. It looks like a lot of jobs that are available now may, become automated as artificial intelligence gets better, especially entry level jobs. That's another great, reason to think about being an entrepreneur. It's a survivalist thing, landing on your feet, being able to not be reliant on some company that all of a sudden says, oh, we're laying off 4,000 people, and guess what? You're one of them because we're, going to automate all these jobs with artificial intelligence. If you have your own thing going, and then you're using artificial intelligence to make it better, to leverage what you can do, well, then you're in a place of power. If you're worried about, oh my gosh, a robot might come and take my job, that's a scary place to be. And no company can offer you security anymore. The best security you can have is to develop those skills as an entrepreneur and have businesses of your own, even if they're just side hustles, maybe at first or always, maybe you have multiple, things going, but you should have other income streams that you're developing yourself, that you can rely on and not have to rely on some other company or some other people, because they could guess wrong, and suddenly guess who's going to, bear the brunt of that? We are, right? You are. Love this quote, right? Thomas Watson, IBM. He was the head of it. And look at that above his desk. He always had that think. That's a great quote. This guy was great. If you want to increase your success rate, double your failure rate. Phew. I mean, that's just a really great way to think of things. Don't be afraid of failing. Fail more. Fail more. Fail fast, and then learn. That's the key, is to do what they call postmortems, pre-mortems too. Like, what could go wrong with this? But afterwards, what did go wrong with this? And then you learn from that, and that's how you build up skill sets. You don't build up skill sets and knowledge. There's book learning certainly, but really where we learn is in the doing. And so if you want to increase your success, increase your failures. So this one, I put this to fill it. This is where you take some time and think about these things we talked about and make some notes. Three things that that basically describe you, like we said, and what your advice your 80-year-old self would give you. These are all important things, very important. Um, and also that predict, what kind of life, what is your life going to look like in 10 years, and dream big on that, really everything you could possibly want and do. So let's keep going on, huh? So here's some more stuff on entrepreneurial mindset. Basically what I've done is I put this is I've thought about this for a long time, and I've taught this a lot, and so these are my different slides from that, and wanted to go through these. So once again, pursuit of opportunity without regard for the resources you currently have, taking financial risks in the hope of profit, enterprising. And the reason for profit is one, well, you need profit because you want to, some of that, you want monetary rewards to accrue to us for our great ideas and our efforts in, bringing those, executing and bringing those into the world. But we also need profit to plow back into the business, to grow it and to keep it sustainable. And the way we know we have profit is when we have product market fit, right? When we have a product or a service and the market, our customers really want it, they're willing to pay for it, that's when you know you have something of value. I always like this, the adoption curve. You innovate, and then there's early adopters, and this is kind of a heavy duty chasm here, right? And then your company can start to grow. But how adoption happens of a product or service is very interesting, and it's interesting to think of, where do we lie on this? Are we early adopters? Do we, when the latest phone or the latest, AI model or whatever comes out, do we go and start using it right away, or do we wait until people are using it and then, oh, gee, yeah, I should get into that too? It's interesting to think about this in our terms of our own personality as well. Here's a couple of great books. The Lean Startup. That is a great book that goes through this, the process of customer discovery, product market fit, and growing a company and understanding the different stages in a very lean way. Lean meaning you're not spending a lot of money doing this. You're trying to create experiments to find out what you have and where customers are, and creating a company around that. And the same thing with crossing the chasm, is that how do you cross over that chasm I showed you there, and into having lots of people. And yes, these inspirational quotes will be available. Thanks so much, Tracy. Yeah, um, I'll I'll put this with the I'll put the slide deck with the presentation, and it'll be a YouTube video with the slide deck in the notes there, in the show notes. And it's also available. All the stuff's available through the MBA ASAP community, which I encourage you to join. That's really where everybody in there is getting together, and lots of peers supporting each other, talking about things, keeping these ideas going on, because this is an ongoing process, right, of growth and development. And yeah, but absolutely, absolutely. These quotes, I mean, for me, it's been a treasure trove, right? These are priceless. These are the things that keep me going every day. When you get down or something, you forget, you go back and start reading these type of things. It's like, oh yeah, now I know who I am, who I want to be. And yeah, so I'll make them available for sure. You talked about, we're in this incredibly changing, rapidly changing environment. And Moore's Law, Gordon Moore, he was one of the founders of, along with Bob Noyce, founder of Intel. And basically, what he started to understand as they started to make semiconductors was, each year they could put twice as many transistors onto a piece of silicon as they could the year before. And so that type of exponential growth, uh, he did that paper in the 1960s, I think 1965, and it's continued to grow like that for the last 50, well, 60 years. And so they call it a law now. It's not really a law, it's just his prediction, but because it's worked for so long. And that's what's gotten us to now having billions of transistors on a piece of silicon, and these incredible chips that allow us to do all kinds of uh, unbelievable technology that would have seemed impossible even 5 years ago. I mean, to be able to broadcast video, to do this, to make a live streaming show, across the world. I mean, just remarkable, remarkable things. I wrote a book recently called "We Are All Magi Now." I mean, we're all magicians in a way. The quote by Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. He was a science fiction writer, but he said that any technology that is sufficiently advanced is indiscernible from magic. And I think that's really true. When we're living with all kinds of things, I mean, these, even our little phones and stuff, like a, Philosopher's Stone, Black Mirror, incredible stuff, right? And we have so much power at our control now that we're all magi, we're all magicians. So the best way to predict the future is to create it. That's a great quote. Peter Drucker was a famous professor of management at Harvard Business School, and that quote's been attributed to a number, to also to Alan Kay. But it's a great, and it's true. The best way to predict the future is to be participating in creating it, and that's what, as an entrepreneur, you can do. And I really like this idea too. About timing and luck. A lot of it is timing and luck, and the longer you stay in the game, the more you increase your luck surface, because then things can happen. That's why having a sustainable business is really key, because then you can be around for a while until the timing and the lucky parts come in. Lots of people think it's, the success is because of their fantastic efforts and all the great, brilliant things they do. Really, there's a big aspect of luck and timing. You go back to any company, anytime. It's just being at the right time in the right place. But you have to be there, right? And I love this quote. He's a famous soccer player, right? You don't get lucky, you get in position. And here, you don't Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, you don't for predicting what's going to happen, where the future is going to go, and trying to be there. Yeah, I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be. That's what you want to be doing. So becoming a polymath, becoming a jack of all trades, to have a generalist idea of all kinds of wide-ranging knowledge. And how do you get that knowledge? Well, primarily through one of the superpowers nowadays is reading. Not too many people have the discipline to sit down and actually read a book or something. Everybody's flipping through TikTok, things like that. If you can have that sustained, like Cal Newport calls it, deep work mentality, where you can stay focused and read things and actually, be self-directed, be an autodidact, a self-learner. And a polymath is someone who knows lots of different things from lots of different fields. Then you can take things from one field and find out that idea is transferable to another field. That's when you can start to make creative ideas and be very successful. Really, really key. So here's a polymath manifesto. I read lots of stuff. I learn all the time. You want to be a lifelong learner. You want to have a growth mindset. I mean, that's really the key. And that just comes naturally, right, to us. We're excited. We have lots of curiosity. The key is to pursue those things. When we are curious about something, run it down, track it down, learn it. Don't long for a better life. Live the life you have. You know, that's the thing. Don't wish they had an easier life. Wish for the strength to, be able to endure the life that you're given. No whatever it is. So in the macro environment, you have to the ecosystem around being an entrepreneur, raising money. I've come to the part where I don't raise money anymore. I just use the money that I have and start out small and build things up, so that then I retain the equity in my projects and businesses. Equity is the ownership. Instead of selling it for some money and then using that money to make the company and then making other people rich. And then what I've found too, investors are great. They can be really good if they also add value. But a lot of times what you're doing is you're giving up part of your company, you're giving up direction, and you're in a way hiring yourself a boss, which I never really, I found that I didn't like it anymore. So what's government's role? We think of government as, oh, well, whatever it is, but the stability, the rule of law, the safety, the predictability. That's when if you start a company or if you invest in something, that things are going to be relatively similar in 5, 10 years, so that you can do those kind of planning for a decade. Those are the key roles of government: having institutions, a rule of law, so that there's fairness, and that there's property rights, so that what you own, you can, but through intellectual property like patents and trademarks, or property rights like, you own this factory or whatever it is. Those things are key. Safety. You know, uh, those are the kind of things that's the fundamental basis to have the environment, so that we can actually become entrepreneurs. Otherwise, if you don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months, if it's unpredictable, then why bother? And so that's the key, is to find a place to live where there's a stable and predictable, environment, and that is based on having a well-designed government and a well-functioning government. So functioning institutions, courts, banking, infrastructure, even roads, telecommunications, all kinds of things, regulation, education, the ability to have education, and tax collection. Taxes, people always say, oh, taxes, they're a bad thing. But, taxes are the revenue source that allow us to pay for a functioning government, fire departments, police, roads, road repair. This is a great, great quote too. choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. That's really what we're going for, right? Is like, oh my gosh, it's so pleasant. What I love, when I first started to be an entrepreneur, when I first started doing this, and getting really into it, is suddenly, we have this sort of like TGIF, thank God it's Friday, right? Ideas, and then the weekend, and then Sunday nights, like, oh no, back to work Monday, and then the grind of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and commuting, all that kind of stuff. When I realized that, oh my gosh, I don't look forward to the weekends anymore. I mean, the weekends are great, but like every day's a weekend. Every day I feel, I work on the weekends because I love it, you know, and I'm excited for Monday because, oh, finally everybody else is going to get back engaged and now I can get busy again. It's funny, like sometimes Sunday nights, like, great, tomorrow's Monday. That's a great thing. Like, Monday used to be like, oh, I hate Monday. I don't like Mondays, the old song, Boomtown Rats, right? But that type of, I don't like Mondays and thank God for Fridays. And, that's a cycle that entrepreneurship allows you to break free of. And that's, to me, has been really, really a key freedom, and not having that, cloud in my mindset. So benefits of being an entrepreneur, right? Independence, autonomy, satisfaction, financial reward. I mean, basically, when you work for someone else, you are creating surplus value. Otherwise, they wouldn't hire you, right? You're creating more value than they're paying you for. And that extra value goes to the business or to the owner or to whoever else it is, the shareholders. So you're creating surplus value. Otherwise, they'll let you go, right? They'll fire you if you're not. So if you are a entrepreneur, you can capture that surplus value. Wish I popped my face up on your screen. Hey, good to see you. Good to see you, Con. And self-esteem, right? There's a self-esteem when you are actually being who you are, right? That authenticity that we talked about earlier there. And you're contributing. Whatever you're doing, that product market fit. You are giving something to people. Either you're eliminating some pain point or friction in the world, or you're creating some sort of delight. Those are basically the two types of business, right? Either you're reducing some kind of pain, or you're creating delight in some way. Um, and when you're doing that, you're contributing. You're actually helping people. And so there's downside, right? Business can fail. You can get into legal battles. I had some of those. I hate it. Obstacles come up. But really, that's where you learn. The obstacle is the way. Loneliness, it's lonely at the top. When you're your own person, no one's telling you what to do. No one's coming to save you. You know, you have to have the courage to face that, head on. Financial insecurity to a degree, oh, you don't, you're only getting what you make. Um, but there's financial insecurity working for a company. You can work for a company for 20 years and suddenly that company goes out of business. Hey, much. It's good to see you. It's good to see you there, Sudhanshu. And I really appreciate you being here. All you folks. It's really great. And I'm glad that you're interested in this. If you're interested in this, you're on the right path. I could say from my own experience. So it's one about heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? There's going to be some personal strain. Tell a romantic story of my life. Well, I'll do that some other time, but I can tell you these stories are all about. I used to work for companies, and it was really tough. Like I said, I had great jobs too, absolutely fantastic jobs, but I really wanted to work for myself. I think that was one of the, that's the most romantic thing I can think of, is like somebody, a person gets in a hole and then a person gets out of a hole, right? That's the story all the time. Well, we dig a hole for ourselves by getting into a job, and then we have some bills to pay, and oh my gosh, now I can't leave this job because I have to pay my mortgage, or I have to pay my car payment, or all that kind of stuff. So it's really a challenge, and that's like the hero's journey. We have to figure out, how do we free ourselves from these dragons that are chaining us down and all. This is an interesting thing. Randy Zuckerberg, that is Zuck's sister, right? From Facebook, and she said, choose three. Business, family, friends, health and fitness, and sleep. Choose three. In a way, it's being facetious. You don't have to be that insane about the work. I mean, in a way, you want to do the work, be an entrepreneur, so that you can attend to family, friends, and also to your health and fitness and your sleep and to your business. So balancing those out, I think, is really critical because you don't want any of them to suffer because you're trying to pursue your dreams. Your dreams should include that you're going to take everybody else along with you and help them all out. I'm going to take a little sip of water here. So, right, the illusion of choice that we have, right? There's disruptions in the labor market. The robots are coming. This is the other downside about saying, well, I don't want to choose entrepreneurship because I want to stay safe and work for a company and all. It's a race against the machines. Rule-based jobs are risky. Any job you have, white-collar jobs now, are they're rule-based. That you do this, do that. Anything that's rule-based like that, we know, right, can be put into a AI, and all of a sudden that job goes away. So, in a way, entrepreneurial thinking is survival. So here's the costs and benefits, right? There's costs, the opportunities you might give up, your time, but the benefits, wealth, knowledge, skills, these are the kind of things. Wow. So you got a gym, right on, right on. You got a gym working in India, I see there. And I hope you do get to run it. And this is a great way to learn. And again, taking my course, my MBA ASAP course on mba-asap.com. Sign up. It's now accredited by Florida Global University. So you get, it's university accredited. Taking that course and then joining the community and being part of the MBA ASAP community, because that's where we all support each other and work through our problems. So those are great ways to keep going forward. I love this quote. Yeah, get the diploma. Right on. Um, you know, from Hyperion by Keats. I love this idea. That we're godlike in a way. We can read. Knowledge enormous makes a god of me. All the kind of things. Names, deeds, legends. Creations and stories, all at once poured through his brain. The wonderful power and exhilaration from learning more to developing our skills to developing ourselves, that's really the key. That's where we the most satisfaction comes from. The money, the wealth, that'll come, but really to expand ourselves, to grow, that's really the yep. Hyperion is the sun in Greek mythology. Absolutely. And that's what John Keats named that poem after. It's about the sun god. Yeah. And bachelor's degrees. I also studied English literature. So, right on. So that's the entrepreneurial mindset. I hope you really enjoyed this webinar, and I can see by the comments and all that you have, and I love that type of engagement. Thank you so much. This will be posted on YouTube, so you can watch it over and over. I will put all of the slides in the show notes for it, so you can check them out. Some of the ones that I skipped by where it was dense, you can read them and all that kind of stuff. And best of luck, and I hope to hear from you soon. And take care.